Jay Seti, would you please introduce the program for this evening?
Well, there's a saying that one apple a day keeps the doctor away, and that laughter is the best medicine. So we have with us tonight Joe Russo to provide us a good dose of laughter. Joe Russo's bio covers a full page, but I will shorten it for the intro. In his professional career, Joe worked at AT&T for some 30 years. He enlisted in the U.S. Army National Guard 50th Armored Division and was tank commander from 1964 to 1970. Joe is active with the National Guard Militia Museum and the 112th Field Artillery Association in Lawrence, New Jersey. Joe loves to make people laugh. He has done comedy at the Catch a Rising Star and has been performing at various clubs for the last 2 years throughout the state. Joe loves to play music and loves to entertain. So Joe, he will present to us with a flair of, guess what, Rodney Dangerfield. Joe, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. What a joy to be here. I know everybody says that, but it's true. My wife and I come up here a week ago just so I could find out where the place was, you know? And her car has the navigation. My old car does not. So we were stunned with the beauty of this place. My wife said to me, "You couldn't live there, they'd throw you out. You're a slob." What do you mean I'm a slob? She said, "Your brother's the neat one. In his bathroom, all his bottles are lined up perfectly. You know, I mean, is it, you know, my brother became a men's room attendant." I tell you, but I got to ask you a question. Maybe somebody can help me. What did the duck say to the prostitute? Put it on my bill. Now, I got to tell you one thing, guys. With all the beautiful furniture and stuff around here, the fences, everything, you know, got to remind you of something. Don't make love by the garden gate. Love is blind, but the neighbors ain't. So, you know, Rodney was on a lot of shows, Johnny Carson. I liked him so much. After he died, I figured I'm going to try and learn some of his jokes. You know, it was just hilarious, you know. And he'd come out, and Johnny Carson would say, "Our next guest has been here many times, and he still gets no respect. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Rodney." And he would come out. Rodney would come out and he said, "Oh, what a group, what a group." He said, "Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm all right now, but it's a rough shape last week. Bought a used car, found my wife's dress in the back seat. It's rough, my wife. We have an on-again, off-again relationship. Every time I get on, she says, get off." It's crazy. He's nuts. But, you know, it's been rough. He says, you know, life ain't easy for me. You know, first time I took my wife out, I mean, she wasn't so nice to me. She's still not nice to me. On our first date, I took her to a movie. Come back home on her front porch. I asked her if I could kiss her on the cheek. She bent over. I'll tell you the story of my life. It ain't easy for me, you know. Now, you know, he could do 300, 400. He had so many. And some of the clubs, I channel some this way and channel some that way. And so I wrote a bunch down so I could go to him when I want to. But my wife, you know, I mean, she's really fat. My wife is fat. Now, usually someone in the audience, how fat? I'll tell you how fat she is. She went to weigh herself. The scale said 1 at a time. I'm telling you, she's fat. I took her to a baseball game. Nobody would leave until she sang. Fat broad. She's so fat. I met her at a Macy's Day parade. She was wearing ropes. Every time I take her to the beach, the swimmers keep trying to roll her back into the surf, you know? The fat broad. I think she's ugly too, my wife. How ugly? She's so ugly, she's what's known as a two-bagger. When you go out with her, you put a bag over your head in case the bag over her head breaks. I took her up at the Empire State Building. All the airplanes started attacking her. It's ugly. I tell you, my wife is so fat, she wears 2 wristwatches, 1 for each time zone. It's crazy. But he crazy, he's so crazy. So his real name was Jacob Cohn. Rodney said, I grew up in a little town, Babylon, Long Island, New York. Very small town, very small town. They said the population never changed. Every time a new kid was born, some guy left town. It was a rough town too. I asked a cop, I said, hey, buddy, how far is the subway? He said, I don't know. So far, nobody ever made it. And I was working a club, you know, and Luigi's, formerly Nuncio's knuckle room, formerly Angelo's. And they pulled me over and they said, look, when you work this club, a lot of my boys are under a lot of stress and tension. You got to make them forget their troubles. Rodney says, how are you going to make somebody who's up for manslaughter forget their troubles, you know? But the gangs are getting real bad in my community. Last week, they auctioned off a police car. Was 2 cops still in it. We got the only precinct, Babylon, Long Island, New York. It's got a peephole on the door. That's a rough neighborhood. I went to a rough high school. Let me tell you, my English teacher said to me, Joe, what comes after a sentence? I said, an appeal. I tell you, it's such a rough high school. We have the only class newspaper that has an obituary in it. Yeah, life is rough, you know. So hold on, guys. I wanted to keep the flow going. So all right, wait a minute. Nothing goes right for me, you know? Everything goes wrong for me. I get no respect. I met the Surgeon General. He offered me a cigarette. I told my doctor I want a vasectomy. He said, with a face like yours, you don't need one. Dr. Vinny Boombots, you know what he says. I told my doctor I got shingles. He tried to sell me aluminum siding. And you know, I had a health appointment the other day. I came back home just after he pulled his finger out of my butt, you know. I got home and I decided I really need a new dentist. But I was an ugly baby. It's very ugly. And the day I was born, the doctor told my parents, we did everything we could, but he made it. And a delivery room nurse took one look at my face, turned me over on my backside and said, look, twins. The doctor slapped me, you know, nurse got a couple of shots in too, I'll tell you. So my doctor, you know, my psychiatrist, I do a little Henny Youngman too, you know, I like him and a few of the others. Henny Youngman said, I told my doctor, So I told my doctor I broke my leg in 2 places. He said, well, don't go into those places. I made an appointment with my psychiatrist. I'm so ugly, he told me to lay face down. He said, Joe, what's the problem? I said, nobody will talk to me. He said, next. All right. And my mother, my father, my sister, my daughter, my son, I bought him a BB gun. He bought me a T-shirt with a bullseye on it. What a kid. He scotch tapes the worms to the sidewalk and watched the birds get hernias. Rough. I told him, where do you have kids of your own? He said, where do you have kids of your own? I'll tell you what's embarrassing. You come home from work and you see your son and the milkman going to a father and son dinner. Before we got married, my wife said to me, look, I was raised in a conservative Italian-American family. Don't talk sex until after we're married. After we got married, she said, you can talk about it all you want. Crazy. And I told you we went to the movie. Did I tell you that? I told you that. All right. And my son, he put crazy glue in my preparation H. I told my dentist my gums were receding. I found out I was using preparation H on my toothbrush. I told my teeth are getting yellow. He told me to wear a brown necktie. One thing about my dentist, he found a way to hide his bad breath. He raises his arms. All right, it was rolling right along, guys. I took my wife. We have separate vacations, sleep in separate bedrooms, eat in different restaurants. So far, we're doing all we can to keep our marriage alive. All right, folks. My doctor, Dr. Vinny Boombatz, I told about him. He told me just last week he had 6 cases of VD in his office. I mean, he's doing it right now. They found a new version of Russian roulette. They pass around 6 hookers. One of them's got VD. So my wife had an accident with the car. I said, what happened? She said, I hit a tree. I said, you hit a tree? She said, I blew the horn. And one day she got carjacked. I said, did you get a good look at the guy? She said, no, but I got the license plate number. I tell you, it ain't easy being me. You remember it was one of those singers, Billy Crystal, an actor. Billy Crystal, he had some great sayings. He said, women need a reason to have sex. Men just need a place. And then he said, whoever said, Robin Williams, he was divorced a bunch of times, and so was Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart said, no more marriage for me. I'm just going to go out and find a woman I don't like and give her a house. Yeah. And Zsa Zsa Gabor, you remember them. The socialites came over from Hungary, went to LA and New York, diamonds, everything dripping all over. She said, darling, I was married 6 times, so I wasn't a very good wife, but I was a great housekeeper. Every time I got divorced, I kept the house. And then Lady Astor, who had this running feud with W.C. Fields. She said, if you were my husband, I would poison you. He said, madam, if I was your husband, I would take it. Yeah, you know, I looked up every time my family gets together, something like this, they all want me to take the picture. That way I'm not in it. I looked up my name in the family tree. I found out I'm the sap. It was two dogs using the tree. I was in 7th Avenue. It was on 7th Avenue. This stranger come up to me. He says, sir, could you tell me how to get to Carnegie Hall? I said, yeah, practice. And it was on 5th Avenue the week before. And this guy didn't know. Stranger tapped me on the shoulder. He said, excuse me, sir, can you tell me how to get to Central Park? I said, no. He said, okay, I'll mug you here. I got the taxi. I said, I want to go to the Waldorf Astoria. He said, sir, you're at the Waldorf Astoria. I said, oh, thanks. Next time, don't drive so fast. Henny Youngman. I asked the taxi drivers Friday night, take me where the action is. He took me to my house. And my wife, she likes sex in the backseat of the car, but she wants me to drive. You know, Bob Hope, all his great one-liners. He said, it's so cold out last night, I saw a politician with his hand in his own pocket. The guys were great. And you remember Flip Wilson? Who doesn't remember Flip Wilson? Flip Wilson talked about great quotations, and he mentioned Benjamin Franklin. He said Benjamin Franklin was very practical, had this quotation. He said, it's hard to forget a girl when you buy her a gift on time. Okay. So I called the airline representative and I said, I want you to send one of my bags to LA, one of my bags to Miami, and the third bag to New York. She said, sir, I can't do that. He said, you did last week. And then Flip Wilson, you know, he used to talk about Geraldine. You know the way he would talk, the devil made me buy this dress. So he said, great quotations. He remembered Sarah Johnson, who was talking to the airline representative. And she said, if you can fly this plane 600 miles an hour in the dark and find Los Angeles, you could find my bag. Well, yeah. Well, you know, I talked about my wife, of course. We never have sex anymore. We get undressed, we can't stop laughing. But I'll tell you, when my wife has screams, especially when I walk in on her, and she likes to talk to me during sex. She called me last night, she called me from a motel. I go in. Flip Wilson was on the show, and he comes in to his house unexpectedly. And he says, let's see, there's a cigarette butt in the ashtray. Now, if there was a guy in here, where would he be? Under the bed. Under the bed. Nobody there. He said, he ain't under there. He said, the bathroom. He opened the door to the bathroom. Nobody was there. He said, he ain't in there. He opens the door to a closet, and there's the guy with a 45 pointed right at him. Flip says, he ain't in there. My wife and I was working Catch a Rising Star at the Hyatt in Princeton. We checked into the hotel. I told the bellman, take care of my bag. He started feeling up my wife. And this stuff goes one way through my head. I got to catch it again. And bartender said to me, hello, sir, what do you have tonight? I said, I don't know what I feel like having. Why don't you surprise me? He showed me a naked picture of my wife. I said, okay, make me a zombie. He said, God beat me to it. I'm telling you, my dog, his favorite bone is in my arm. You know, it took me 2 years to teach him how to sit. Took him 1 day to teach me how to roll over and beg. I told my wife, I hope I die in bed. She said, again? I bought us a water bed. My wife calls it the Dead Sea. And she's cold too. My wife's very cold. How cold? She's so cold, her side of the water bed is frozen. I mean, she's a cold woman. She's a bad cook too. Last night she said, take out the garbage. I told her, you cooked it. You take it out. The mess. In our house, we pray after we eat. She made our kid alphabet soup. He spelled out help. I mean, she's such a bad cook. The flies chipped in to fix the hole in the screen door. That's a wild one, ain't it? I tell you. That's a story of my life. They get no respect. Yeah, I told you, I met my wife at a Macy's Day Parade. She had ropes on her. But he, you know, with Johnny Carson, he would sit, and there was Big Ed, and they would, it was time for him to think of things, you know. He says, good health is the best thing. Good health is the best thing, you know. It's, yeah, he talked about, I told you, he talked about being ugly. He said, I'm so ugly, when I open the Halloween door, the kids give me candy. Well, as a kid, I was so ugly. We played in a sandbox. The cat kept trying to cover me up. Gotta be ugly. So look, guys, we keep it civil here. I don't know what Rodney did in his clubs, but on TV, he kept it civil. Well, you know, the weather's starting to change, right? It's going to be warm. So the recommendation is when the weather's hot and sticky, that's no time to dunk your dickie. When the frost is on the pumpkin, that's the time for Dickie Duncan. That's as far as I'll go. Last night, my kids, 3 of them, went screaming to my wife. They said, Mommy, the house is on fire. They said, shh, you'll wake up Daddy. I told my father, I want to go ice skating. He said, wait till it gets warmer. When I was a kid, my mother would take me into a pet store. Everybody would ask her, how big will he get? So I told my father said to me, let's go to the zoo if we can see who your real father is. Yeah. Silly. Rodney built up all that stuff. He was in show business as Jacob Cohn. And he said he quit show business. I said, to give you an idea how well I was doing at the time, I was the only one who knew I quit show business. And I said, my agent says, I got a name for you, name change, give me $2,000. Rodney says, what's the name? He said, what are you, crazy? Give me the $2,000 and I'll give you. And that's where Dangerfield came about so much. And then the shtick of no respect, right? No respect. And that built, I mean, his whole career on that, obviously. My dog, I told you about my dog. His favorite bone is in my arm, right? Last night, he messed on the newspaper 5 times 3 times I was reading it. So Henny Youngman says, I called the law firm, Brown, 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 and Brown. I said, let me talk to Mr. Brown. He said, I'm sorry, resigned from the company. He retired 2 weeks ago. He said, okay, let me talk to Mr. Brown. I said, with a client now, he won't be ready for an hour. He said, okay, let me talk to Mr. Brown. He said, he's on vacation, be back in 2 weeks. He said, okay, let me talk to Mr. Brown. He said, speaking. Yeah, normally, tonight I'd be at my fan club, but it broke up. The guy died. Yeah. I call my daughter. My daughter, I told you she failed driver's ed, couldn't get used to the front seat. They took her graduation picture horizontal. We call her Federal Express because every time she goes to a guy's apartment, she absolutely positively has to be there overnight. I'm telling you. In her senior graduation yearbook, she was voted most likely to conceive. Robin Williams, I remember him. Took his own life, right? Terrible. But he said, yes, divorce. That's where a woman extracts a man's wallet through his testicles. Somebody mentioned back there, you having a soft drink or liquor? I said, no, it's a soft drink. There's no liquor here. I joined Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a 2-drink minimum. I called incontinence line. They asked me if I could hold. It's so stupid. It's so crazy. But you know what you remember Martin and Lewis when they came on? Some of you older guys used to wait for them. It was something you could talk about the next day. They were Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin when they were together. It was unbelievable. Their comedy. Yeah, I was so ugly. My mother fed me with a slingshot. Imagine that. Mashed potatoes. Right in the face. I came home from work, found a guy's wallet, had 2 pictures of my kids in it. Told my kids about the birds and the bees. They told me about my wife and the butcher. Came home from trick-or-treating. My parents had moved and left no forwarding address. I know, I don't blame my wife for cheating on me. I'm a bad lover. Last week, I caught a peeping Tom booing me. Yeah, my father, just dumb old man, but he was a workaholic. Every time you mentioned work, he got drunk. I tell you, I got to stop drinking. I gave a urine specimen. There was an olive in it. You know what they say? Alcohol doesn't cure all your ills, but neither does milk. So look, if I hold up, what kind of booze is this? 5 what? 5-star? Hennessy. Was it brandy, I think? Hennessy 5-star? How about this one? 4 Roses. This one's an old one. I don't know if you remember it. It's 3 Feathers brandy. It was a brand. How about that one? Not a number, but a letter. VO, right? How about this? Old Granddad. Get it? Yeah, they want to use my family because I'm in show business. They want to use my family to make a sequel to Roots. They're going to call it Fertilizer. No, I tell you, this is terrible. I don't mean to make light of it. These ladies who go jogging. without even a kitchen knife on them, right? I told my wife. She said, he'll use it on me. I said, you stupid. If it comes to that, stab the guy. And, well, I got my wife a rape whistle. She gave it back to me. She said, I blew it all night. Nobody came. But you know what I did get? You can get on Amazon those very hard plastic fingernails. And they're for cosmetology because they can't say anything else. But I told my wife, you go walking down a street, just have a couple in your hand, and you just hit somebody with those things. My God, you know, it's true. You could get them. They're only about $10, $12. You get 20, 30 of them. So, but this poor young lady, my God, she went, jogging. You know the story. All right, folks, I'm going to say thank you. I don't like taking the time to go look up more and more. But it's been my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll see you next time I look at you.